You are controlled, not with chains, but with ideas, not by tyrants screaming orders, but by institutions whispering comfort, not through violence, but through praise, through routine, through the silent reward of being normal. Nietzsche saw it coming long before it was fashionable to resist. He warned of a domination not made of iron, but of values, borrowed, passive, inherited. A world where power no longer wears a crown, but a smile. You think you are free, but look closer. How modern life masks ancient forms of domination. Domination did not disappear. It evolved. What once was brute force is now soft compliance. What once were whips are now notifications. What once were kings are now algorithms. You wake up, check your phone, feel the need to be liked. You dress not to express, but to signal. You speak not to share truth, but to maintain social cohesion. Every part of your life is curated to fit into a system you didn't choose, yet obey without question. Nietzsche called it the spirit of the times, a slow fog that seeps into your thinking until even your rebellion is manufactured. You don't have to be locked in a cage to be a captive. All it takes is a life lived by default. The herd instinct Nietzsche warned about deep inside you is a fear, ancestral, primal, the fear of exile. It whispers, stay close, don't stand out, they will abandon you. This fear is the root of the herd instinct, the subconscious drive to conform. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a system created by the weak to contain the strong. It flatters obedience, it rewards self-denial, it elevates meekness as virtue, while quietly shaming ambition, confidence, power. You are taught to mistrust your instincts, to feel guilt for wanting more, to see your uniqueness as a problem to be corrected. The herd doesn't need to punish you. You'll do it yourself, with self-doubt, with guilt, with shame. You'll silence your own roar. Why comfort is the new control. You were promised peace, convenience, a painless life, but what they gave you was sedation. A system that feeds you dopamine while draining your fire. You scroll, you swipe, you consume, and all the while, your will to power atrophies. Nietzsche knew suffering was not the enemy, stagnation was. Comfort unchecked is not compassion, it is control. It keeps you tame, predictable, dependent. You don't revolt, not because you are free, but because you are numb. They don't need to censor you. You've stopped speaking. They don't need to enslave you. You've stopped dreaming. All they had to do was make you comfortable. Obedience, disguised as morality. You think you're being good, but ask yourself, whose definition of good? Morality in Nietzsche's eyes was not divine. It was designed, crafted by those who feared strength to weaken it. A system of values born from resentment, not truth. You are taught to feel proud of being polite, humble, self-sacrificing. But is that virtue or is it strategy? Does it make you good or does it make you harmless? Obedience wrapped in righteousness is still submission. Nietzsche didn't hate morality. He hated unexamined morality. He knew that until you create your own values, you are living someone else's life and perhaps dying someone else's death. You have been born into a prison without walls, a theater where everyone wears masks and calls it love, a system that smiles at your compliance and punishes your authenticity. This is the beginning of awakening, not to revolution, but to revaluation, of questioning not just society, but yourself, your habits, your thoughts, your definitions of right. To see domination not as a battlefield, but as a whisper in your own mind. The war is not out there. The war is inside. You imagine submission looks like shackles, loud commands, brute suppression. But the most effective domination is silent. It lives in the small things. In the way you speak, the way you hesitate, the way you apologize for simply existing too brightly. You're not controlled by force. You're controlled by the quiet, clever tools of social conditioning. Tools Nietzsche saw clearly. Tools designed to mold the soul, not just the body. This is not a war for your actions. It is a war for your inner world. Language as a cage of thought. Language is not just communication, it is control. You think in words. So when those words are given to you, your thoughts are no longer yours. What if selfish is just the word they gave you to stop you from choosing yourself? What if arrogant is just the name they give to confidence that threatens their comfort? What if failure is simply deviation from their script? They gave you a vocabulary of limitation, a grammar of guilt, a syntax of submission. You express your dreams in their language and wonder why they never feel real. To free your mind, you must first reclaim your words, name your own values, speak in tones they find unfamiliar because truth doesn't speak their dialect. How guilt becomes a leash. Guilt is not an emotion. It is a tool, a leash placed around your neck by systems that reward obedience and punish individuality. You feel guilty not for hurting others, but for defying expectations, not for being cruel, but for being true. You were taught to apologize for your ambition, for your desires, for your too muchness, and so you bend. You stay small. You offer pieces of yourself to maintain a fragile peace that was never mutual. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Guilt was never meant to guide, it was meant to tame. And when guilt is gone, in its place comes something dangerous, something rare: freedom. Praise as a tool for conformity. We all crave praise, but praise is a poisoned apple. It feels good, it makes you shine. But look closer. What are they really praising? Your compliance, your agreeableness, your ability to fit the mold. They say, "You're such a good person when you give without boundaries." They say, "You're so humble when you erase yourself." They say, "You're so mature when you don't speak your pain." They reward the death of your real self with social validation. And you smile because you've been conditioned to equate praise with love. But love that depends on performance is not love, it's control. And once you see that, you stop performing. You start living. The fear of being bad in a moralized world. You want to be good. Of course you do, everyone does. But what is good? Who decided that kindness is always the answer? That rebellion is sin? That anger must be hidden? They built a moral system to protect the herd, to tame the strong. Nietzsche called it the transvaluation of values. Strength was labeled as cruelty, independence as selfishness, desire as corruption. And now, every time you feel your primal instincts rise, you shame yourself. You fear being bad. But that fear is not your soul speaking. It is the echo of their moral conditioning. Being bad in a sick world is often a sign of health. Sometimes the most ethical act is disobedience. You are not weak. You are wrapped in invisible strings, words, praise, guilt, and fear, all pulling you away from your center. But now you see the strings, you see the tools, you see the architecture of your submission, and that seeing is sacred. This is the turning point. Not rebellion out of anger, but detachment out of truth. Because the moment you no longer speak their language, the moment guilt no longer moves you, the moment praise no longer defines you, the moment you accept being bad in their eyes, you become dangerous, you become free. The herd does not need to imprison you physically. It only needs to teach you how to imprison yourself. You wear their clothes, speak their words, swallow your instincts, smile on command, and over time you forget you ever had a different rhythm, a different truth, a different direction. Nietzsche didn't hate the people. He feared what happens to the individual in the crowd, how the unique soul dissolves in the acid of public opinion, leaving behind only echoes of someone who once dreamed. This chapter is about seeing that system, not as conspiracy, but as culture, not as tyranny, but as agreement, a silent pact that demands you trade authenticity for acceptance. The tyranny of public opinion. Public opinion is the invisible dictator. You don't hear its voice. It speaks through eyebrows raised at your deviation, through the silence after your confession, through the subtle withdrawal of warmth when you speak what's real. It doesn't need to tell you no. It just doesn't clap when you say yes to yourself. So you adjust. Slightly, then again, and again, until your life is a costume you forgot you were wearing. You don't need surveillance when you carry the crowd in your mind. You look around before you speak. You edit before you express. You hesitate before you act. That's not you. That's the ghost of the herd inside your soul. Why standing out triggers punishment? To be seen is dangerous, not because visibility itself is a threat, but because the herd fears what it does not control. Your light reminds them of their darkness. Your boldness exposes their hesitation. So they punish you not with force, but with withdrawal, with sarcasm, with eye rolls and passive jabs. They label your difference attention-seeking, too intense, unrealistic. They must, because if you're allowed to thrive outside the script, it proves the script was never sacred. And that is the one thing the herd cannot accept, that someone else might live freely while they still obey. Envy and resentment as social regulators. Nietzsche called it resentiment, the twisted morality of the weak turned outward as weapon. It's not your success they hate, it's what your success says about their stagnation. They resent your courage because it highlights their cowardice, your passion because it burns through their boredom, your growth because it unmasks their inertia. And so, instead of rising, they pull subtly, strategically. They question your motives. They point out your flaws. They call your evolution arrogance. It's not random, it's regulation, a system maintained by envy disguised as concern. But if you let their resentment define your edges, you'll shrink into something that fits their comfort zone, and that would be your death. Mediocrity enforced by silent consensus. Excellence terrifies the herd, not because they don't admire it, but because it demands a response. It forces a question. Why am I still asleep? So they create a culture of compromise, of safety, of just be realistic. They celebrate modest goals, praise average outcomes, normalize mediocrity, and if you dream too loudly, they call you naive. If you want too much, they say you're ungrateful. If you move too fast, they say you've changed. Of course you've changed. You remembered. You remembered that life is not a checklist, that the soul hungers for more than routine, that you were born to burn, not to blend. And now that remembering is dangerous, because once one person escapes the herd, others might follow. You are not one of them. You never were. You tried to fit. You tried to please. You tried to forget the call inside you, but the call never left. And now you see the architecture. Public opinion, punishment, envy, mediocrity, all designed not by one enemy, but by a collective fear of freedom. Break the architecture, burn the blueprint, walk the unpaved path. Because the herd only rules until someone remembers they are not cattle but fire. This is not the totalitarianism of the past. There are no boots marching outside your door, no loudspeakers barking orders, no visible chains. But you are still controlled, through comfort, through language, through identity. Not by tyrants, but by systems that whisper, stay safe, stay good, stay small. This is soft totalitarianism. It doesn't demand submission, it seduces it. And if you want to escape, you will not do it with rebellion alone. You must do it with transcendence, by becoming something the system cannot contain. The art of thinking dangerously dangerous thoughts are not violent. They are liberating. A dangerous thought is one that questions the unquestioned, that looks at the sacred and asks, why? That sees a rule and replies, no. You were not taught to think. You were taught to repeat, to align, to affirm the collective narrative. But thinking is a blade, and blades threaten the soft prison. When you begin to think for yourself, everything unravels. Your job doesn't make sense. Your relationships feel performative. Your routines become hollow. This is not a crisis. It's a birth. To think dangerously is to risk everything artificial, so you can reclaim everything real. How to cultivate inner sovereignty. You've spent most of your life outsourcing authority. Teachers told you what truth was. Parents told you what love looked like. Culture told you who to be. Inner sovereignty is the quiet revolution of saying, I decide now. It is no longer asking for permission to exist. You stop checking the reactions of others. You stop needing validation to act. You stop shrinking for the sake of peace. You are not a brand, not a persona, not a product to be marketed. You are a presence, a storm, a living contradiction that cannot be reduced. And sovereignty means owning all of it. even the parts they told you were too much, especially those. Detaching from approval-based identity, you were taught to build yourself around applause, be likable, be palatable, be whatever makes others comfortable. But that identity is a cage. Its bars are compliments, its locks are expectations. And so long as your worth depends on being liked, you will betray yourself daily. Detachment is not rejection. It is freedom. It is loving yourself enough to say, I will be real, even if they turn away. I will speak my truth, even if it shakes the room. I will be whole, even if I am alone. You cannot be sovereign and addicted to approval. You cannot be free and still desperate to fit in. Choose one, becoming a stranger to the herd. To escape soft totalitarianism, you must become strange, not for rebellion's sake, but because truth will always look strange to a world built on lies. They will call you cold when you set boundaries. They will call you arrogant when you speak clearly. They will call you lost when you refuse the script. Let them. Their confusion is your confirmation. Nietzsche knew to walk your path is to walk alone, at least for a while. But in that aloneness, you find something the herd never will. Yourself. Not the version they loved, not the version they shaped. The real you, the one who laughs in chaos, who bleeds with meaning, who breathes outside the algorithm. That self is dangerous. That self is free. This is the escape. Not through exile, but through evolution. You don't fight the system by destroying it. You transcend it by becoming untouchable, unknowable, sovereign, no longer a pawn, no longer a projection, but a living truth they cannot map. There is a force inside you that cannot be tamed. It is not your personality, not your ambition, not your goals. It is deeper, older, wilder. Nietzsche called it the will to power, not the will to dominate others, but the will to become, to grow, to transcend, to affirm life not through obedience, but through creation. You were born with it, but they buried it under shame, fear, politeness, and repetition. They made you doubt the very pulse that drives all real transformation. Now it stirs again, and you must decide, will you tame it or become it? Reclaiming your primal drive. This drive is not civilized. It is not polite. It does not wait for permission. It speaks in desire, in instinct, in intuition. It says, leave that place, speak that truth, now burn that bridge. Start that journey. You've heard it whispering in quiet moments, when the room falls silent, when the lie becomes unbearable, when the mirror shows someone else's face. That is not madness. That is your original nature, remembering itself. Reclaiming this drive means shedding the artificial roles, rules, false responsibilities, and returning to a raw, direct relationship with existence. It means saying yes to your inner fire, even if the whole world tries to put it out. How to transcend social scripts. You were given a script: go to school, get a job, be agreeable, consume, retire, die quietly. Every step was mapped, every deviation met with disapproval. But scripts are written by those who benefit from your predictability, your docility, your forgetfulness. To transcend the script is not just to rebel, it is to create, to say, I will not live a life already written. I will write my own. That choice will cost you comfort, familiarity, easy applause, but it will give you something sacred in return: meaning, your story unedited, your pain alchemized, your freedom lived, creating values from your own suffering. Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, but that why cannot be borrowed. It cannot come from religion or tradition or ideology. It must rise from your own suffering, from your wounds, from your chaos. True values are born when you ask, what did my pain teach me? What truth did my loneliness reveal? What beauty did my despair uncover? And then you live from that place, not to be right, not to be moral, but to be true. This is the highest creation, not art, not empire, but ethics, personal, feral, forged in fire, your code, your rhythm, your way. Your call to become the creator, not the captive. This is your moment. You have seen the cage. Comfort, obedience, approval. You have traced the chains, guilt, fear, language. You have felt the pressure of the herd, and still you stand. Now, the final step is not reflection, it is rebirth. You are not meant to follow this content like entertainment. You are meant to use it, to rip yourself out of passivity, to stop scrolling and start sculpting your life from the raw stone of your truth. So here is your call. Delete the script. Burn the fake roles. Say the thing you feared to say. Walk the path no one gave you permission to walk. You are not here to be a product of the world. You are here to create a world from the product of your own becoming. Nietzsche's psychology was never just a critique. It was a challenge. Will you continue to be shaped, or will you become the sculptor? The will to power is inside you. Choose it and never bow again.